Right now, in millions of homes around the world, a small predator is curled up on someone's lap, purring, kneading its paws into a blanket, occasionally headbutting its owner out of pure affection. That same animal, genetically speaking, belongs to the exact same family as a creature that can snap a human spine with one bite. Cats and lions are both felines. Same basic body plan, same retractable claws, same hunting instincts, same tendency to knead with their paws and rub their faces against things they like. A tiger cub, if you raise it from birth, will chase a ball of yarn with the same delighted clumsiness as a kitten. And yet one of these animals sleeps on millions of pillows every night, and the other one will kill its handler even after decades of hand-raising, trust, and affection. So what actually separates the two? Why did the house cat succeed at something lions, tigers, and every other big cat never managed? The answer isn't really about intelligence or friendliness at all. It's about size, math, and money. And once you see the numbers, the outcome looks less like a mystery and more like it was inevitable. Let's start with how cats actually got domesticated in the first place, because it's a very different story than most people assume. Nobody selectively bred the house cat the way we bred dogs from wolves. There was no ancient human sitting around a fire deciding to tame a wild cat. Roughly 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent, humans started farming grain and storing it in large quantities for the first time in history. Grain stores attract rodents. Rodents attract small wildcats. And a wildcat that was slightly less afraid of humans got to eat well, consistently, without competition from other cats that fled the moment people showed up. That's it. That's basically the whole mechanism. The cats domesticated themselves by showing up for the free rodent buffet and gradually tolerating human proximity because it paid off. Humans didn't have to feed them, house them, or breed them deliberately. The cats were doing a job nobody asked them to do and getting paid in mice. In ancient Egypt, this relationship got formalized into something closer to reverence. Cats were protecting grain stores that fed entire cities, and Egyptians treated them accordingly. Sacred animals, sometimes mummified alongside their owners, occasionally even worshipped as living representations of a goddess. And because ships also had rodent problems, cats got recruited as maritime pest control, hitching rides on trading vessels and spreading to ports across the ancient world almost as a side effect of commerce. Notice what's missing from this whole story. No selective breeding program, no careful genetic engineering, no deliberate multi-generation project. Cats more or less walked themselves into domestication because the opportunity happened to exist. Now ask the obvious follow-up question. Why didn't the exact same thing happen with lions? Lions don't sneak into your grain silo. They're apex predators built for open plains and large prey. Antelope, buffalo, zebra, not rodents scurrying around a mud brick storehouse. There was never a version of history where lions casually wandered into human settlements looking for an easy meal of mice, gradually got comfortable with people, and self-domesticated the way cats did. The ecological doorway that let cats in was never available to them. But let's say humans tried to force the issue anyway, the way we deliberately bred wolves into dogs. Even then, the math falls apart almost immediately. Back in 1997, a researcher laid out roughly 6 criteria that determine whether a wild animal can realistically be domesticated. Flexible diet, fast enough growth, willingness to breed in captivity, a calm temperament, low panic response, and a social hierarchy a human can slot into. Lions, interestingly, are one of the only big cats that actually live in structured social groups with a clear hierarchy, a pride, with a dominant male. On paper, that single trait should make them the most promising domestication candidate among big cats. But the other criteria collapse hard. Start with diet. An adult lion needs somewhere around 5 to 8 kilograms of meat a day to stay healthy. A tiger needs even more. That's not a bowl of kibble. That's the equivalent of feeding a small family's meat budget to one single animal, every single day, for its entire life. Ancient economies simply could not have supported large, domesticated populations of animals that expensive to feed, especially when the whole point of dogs and cats was that they made themselves useful without draining resources. Then there's breeding speed, and this is where the numbers get genuinely brutal. A domestic cat reaches sexual maturity around 6 months old, can have 2 to 3 litters a year, and typically has 4 to 6 kittens per litter. That's an animal built for rapid genetic turnover. Exactly what you need if you're trying to selectively breed for tameness generation after generation, the same way that Soviet fox breeding experiment produced dramatically calmer foxes within a decade. A lioness, by contrast, doesn't reach sexual maturity until around 3 to 4 years old, has a gestation period of about 3.5 months, and typically has litters every 2 years, usually 2 to 4 cubs, with high cub mortality in the wild. Do the math on how long it would take to run even a modest multi-generation selective breeding program at that pace. A project that took Soviet researchers a few decades with foxes breeding almost annually would take many centuries with lions. Centuries no ancient civilization had the continuity, resources, or motivation to sustain. And even if some ancient dynasty had the patience for a centuries-long lion breeding project, there's the small matter of what happens when the animal simply misjudges its own strength. This is the part that trips people up, because tame and safe are not the same thing when you're talking about an animal that can weigh 200 kilograms and was built by millions of years of evolution to kill prey many times its own size in seconds. A house cat that gets overexcited during play might scratch you. A tiger that gets overexcited during play, even one hand raised from a cub by a trainer it has known and trusted for years, can kill a person by accident, simply by doing what a cat does when it pounces. Because there's no version of that instinct at that scale that isn't lethal. This isn't hypothetical. Throughout history, plenty of individual big cats have been tamed by individual humans. Roman emperors kept lions, various rulers across history kept tigers and cheetahs as symbols of power, and in the modern era, professional trainers have raised tigers from cubs with genuine trust and affection built over years. And still, serious injuries and deaths among experienced handlers happen with a consistency that never shows up with domestic cats, no matter how poorly socialized or aggressive an individual house cat might be. One of the most famous entertainers in Las Vegas was critically injured on stage by a tiger he had personally raised and worked with for over a decade. Familiarity and affection don't cancel out raw physical power and instinct. That's the core distinction people miss. Taming is something you can do to one individual animal, with enough time, resources, and expertise. Domestication is something that happens to an entire species, across generations, until tameness itself becomes a heritable trait that shows up reliably in offspring without special handling. Individual tigers can be tamed. The species tiger has never been domesticated, and every single generation starts back at zero, wild instincts fully intact, regardless of how tame its parents were. Here's a detail that actually reframes the whole comparison, though. Even the house cat, the domestication success story, isn't nearly as domesticated as a dog. Genetically, domestic cats are remarkably close to their wild ancestor, a small North African wildcat. Compare that to dogs, which have been reshaped so dramatically from wolves over roughly 15,000 years of deliberate breeding that some breeds barely resemble their ancestor at all, physically or behaviorally. Cats still hunt with essentially the same instincts as their wild relatives. A well-fed house cat will still stalk, pounce, and kill toys purely for the satisfaction of the behavior, not hunger. Feral domestic cats can survive and breed entirely independent of humans within a single generation, reverting to wild behavior with almost no difficulty, something that's far harder for most dog breeds to manage. In other words, cats are only lightly domesticated to begin with, mostly because that self-domestication pathway through the grain stores never required humans to reshape them very much. They just needed to tolerate us at a comfortable distance. If even the successful feline domestication story only got partway there, it makes the total absence of any domesticated big cat feel a lot less surprising. Modern attempts to bridge the gap, interestingly, still respect this same size ceiling. Breeders have created hybrid cats like the Savannah, crossed with the African serval, a mid-sized wildcat roughly twice the size of a house cat. Energetic, trainable to a point, but still legally restricted or banned in several places, specifically because of unpredictable behavior. Bengal cats come from crossing house cats with the Asian leopard cat, another small wildcat. Notice the pattern. Every successful hybrid stays anchored to small and mid-sized wildcats. Nobody is producing lion tabby hybrids for the pet market because the size and danger threshold that separates quirky exotic pet from apex predator that can kill you in one motion is a hard biological wall, not a matter of patience or training technique. So really, lions and tigers didn't fail some evolutionary test that cats passed. They were never offered the same deal in the first place. Cats stumbled into an ecological shortcut. Free food, low risk, fast reproduction. That let domestication happen almost as a side effect of showing up. big cats needed a level of ancient economic investment, generational patience, and tolerance for occasional catastrophic risk that no civilization in history could realistically sustain, chasing a payoff that, even after centuries, might never fully arrive. The house cat on your lap right now isn't there because humans were clever enough to tame the wild out of it. It's there because 10,000 years ago, a small, opportunistic hunter noticed an easy meal, decided the risk was worth it, and never really left. Somewhere out on the savannah, a lion is making a very different calculation, and honestly, given the math, it's hard to say it made the wrong call.